All right, where's the thing? What are these and where's the thing? Oh, come on. I should have looked for this earlier. Hmm. Well, I guess I'll use this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Shea. It's my great pleasure to be here serving as your worship associate today. On behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, I welcome you to this morning's hybrid service, whether you're joining us virtually or here in the sanctuary. If you're new to First Unitarian, I invite you to check out our website, firstuuwilm.org, to learn more about us and to sign up for our email newsletter. If you're joining us online and you're interested in learning more about our congregation's ongoing activities, you'll find a link in our chat that leads you to a brief form enabling you to sign up for our e-newsletter. We invite everyone here this morning to join us after service for coffee and conversation in our parish hall located just behind the sanctuary. First Unitarian Church is a welcoming congregation. We affirm the worth and dignity of all. If you are an immigrant, a refugee, undocumented, you are welcome here. If you are Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, atheist, or theist, you are welcome here. Whatever nation you call home, whatever faith is your own, you are welcome here. If you have a disability, visible or invisible, you are welcome here. If you want for nothing, or if you struggle each day to make it through, you are welcome here. Please take a moment now to greet those joining us online by waving to the camera to your left. And now please turn and greet your neighbors with our traditional radical hospitality. Hello. Say one. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Morning. Our call to worship is a responsive reading. So the words will be on the screen, but they're also in your hymnal, number 436. Your part will be in italics. And I'll begin. We come to this time and this place. To renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life. To rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me in lighting it now. As Rebecca lights our chalice, I give you these words from Lee Kinby. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting, not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself from light deep inside, startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story. Please rise now in body or in spirit and join our hymn leader, Sarah Collins, as she leads us in singing hymn number 315, This Old World, followed by our unison affirmation. Please join me now in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
I invite you now into a period of meditation. We're going to have a short guided meditation, but perhaps a little longer than you're used to. I know it's here somewhere. I'll say a couplet. And the first half is the instruction for your in-breath. The second is the instruction for your out-breath. And then the couplet will be followed by an abbreviated form of the instruction for you to repeat to yourself for the minute or so that you're breathing. You'll hear the bell when you're ready for the next couplet. Or really when I'm ready to say the next couplet. If you forget the words, just maintain the awareness of your in-breath and then your out-breath. At the end of the guided meditation, you'll hear 3 sounds of the bell, and that's how you know we're at the end. So I invite you to sit comfortably, allowing your shoulders to relax, your body to feel the support of your seat, and your feet to feel the floor or the ground beneath you. Breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In, out. Breathing in, I'm aware of my body. Sometimes we forget that we are a body as well as a mind. So I just want to be aware of it as I breathe in, my whole self sitting there. Breathing out, I smile to my body in whatever condition it is at this moment. Aware of body, smile to body. Breathing in, I'm aware that thoughts and feelings are arising in me. Breathing out, just for now, I let go of those thoughts and feelings as they arise. Aware of thoughts and feelings, letting go. Breathing in, I am aware of the people sitting around me and the people in my life. Breathing out, I smile to my community. Aware of my community, smiling. Breathing in, I allow compassion to arise within me. Breathing out, I share my compassion with myself and my community. Feeling compassion, sharing compassion. While you were sitting quietly, perhaps one of the things that arose in you was a feeling of compassion for specific people in your life who may need the loving support of this community. So I invite you now, as you wish, you may just speak the name within you, to bring to light those people who need the support and compassion of our community today. And we're going to start with the folks on this side of the congregation. Elvin Regal? Evelyn. Anyone from the center section? Myself and my toe. Eunice and Richard. Jessica Conlon. I repeat the names because on the online broadcast, we unfortunately do not have the congregation mic'd. So if I get the name wrong, I apologize. David Schuster. Anyone on this side? Richard Speck. And then there are sunbursts of transcendent joy in our lives as well, like seeing Jan's grandson walking. So I would invite you to share. I hope I haven't stolen your joy. But share some of those sparks of joy that arose within you. This group. I made it to 80. Center. Michael swam in championships. Yay.
I made it to 70.
I made it to 70. Hey, it's not a competition. Yeah, that's great. Wonderful.
I got to see my youngest daughter for 5 days in Florida.
Visiting with your youngest daughter in Florida for 5 days. Did I? 2 weeks in Vermont. Oh, and Rob made it to 70 too. Okay. Well, may all these names who were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day. Sarah's going to lead us in a musical meditation. You can sing along or just listen to her beautiful voice. The reading this morning is from Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's the passage entitled Internal Formations. There's a term in Buddhist psychology that can be translated as internal formations, fetters, or knots. When we have a sensory input, depending on how we receive it, a knot may be tied in us. When someone speaks unkindly to us, if we understand the reason and do not take his or her words to heart, we will not feel irritated at all, and no knot will be tied. But if we do not understand why we were spoken to in that way and we become irritated, a knot will be tied in us. The absence of clear understanding is the basis for every knot. If we practice full awareness, we will be able to recognize internal formations as soon as they are formed, and we will find ways to transform them. For example, a wife may hear her husband boasting at a party, and inside herself she feels the formation of a lack of respect. If she discusses this with her husband, they may come to a clear understanding, and the knot in her will be untied easily. Internal formations need our full attention as soon as they manifest while they're still weak, so that the work of transformation is easy. If we do not untie our knots when they form, they will grow tighter and stronger. Our conscious, reasoning mind knows that negative feelings such as anger, fear, and regret are not wholly acceptable to ourselves or society, so it finds ways to repress them, to push them into remote areas of our consciousness in order to forget about them. Because we want to avoid suffering, we create defense mechanisms that deny the existence of these negative feelings and give us the impression we have peace within ourselves. But our internal formations are always looking for ways to manifest as destructive images, feelings, thoughts, words, or behavior. The way to deal with unconscious internal formations is, first of all, to find ways to become aware of them. By practicing mindful breathing, we may gain access to some of the knots that are tied within us. When we're aware of our images, feelings, thoughts, words, and behavior, we can ask ourselves questions such as, why did I feel uncomfortable when I heard him say that? What did I say to him? Why do I always think of my mother when I see that woman? Why didn't I like that character in the movie? Whom did I hate in the past that she resembles? Observing closely like this can gradually bring the internal formations that are buried in us into the realm of the conscious mind. There are people who practice sitting meditation for many hours a day and never really face their feelings. Some of them say that feelings are not important. They prefer to give their attention to metaphysical subjects. I'm not suggesting that these other subjects of meditation are unimportant, but if they are not considered in relation to our real problems, our meditation is not really very valuable or helpful. If we know how to live every moment in an awakened way, we will be aware of what is going on in our feelings and perceptions in the present moment, and we will not let knots form or become tighter in our consciousness. And if we know how to observe our feelings, we can find the roots of long-standing internal formations and transform them, even those that have become quite strong. Well, thank you for joining us in person or online. My name's Rebecca Fisher. I've been a member of this congregation for a few decades, and I'm a short, sturdily built woman with chin-length brown hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a brown jacket today. Now, often while Reverend Larry, who's our regular minister, is preaching, I start thinking about other things. Now, this is no shade to Reverend Larry, because usually I'm not planning my week's meals or mulling over my projects. On the contrary, I'm listening with an open mind and heart. At least that's my goal. His thoughtful and inspirational sermons often create the conditions for a thought to arise in me, a thought that demands my attention, as engaging a speaker as he is. So on April 13th of this year, Reverend Larry was speaking about the edge of the unknown and the Jewish holiday Passover, and the thought maybe not so randomly popped up: shame. We don't talk about it much. Now, I know as Unitarians, we recognize that the human experience is wide-ranging. We often acknowledge negative emotions such as anger, fear, depression, anxiety. I hear that talked about a lot. But to paraphrase the song from Encanto, we don't talk about shame, no, no, no. To make sure I wasn't suppressing the memory of such a service or that it had happened during a service I had missed, I checked in with Reverend Larry. Nope, he said, or words to that effect. We haven't, at least not in his tenure. So a brief disclaimer here: I'm not a psychologist, I'm not any kind of therapist or counselor. My understanding of our emotional landscape comes from experience, a little understanding of Buddhist psychology, and my own rumination, surely the most unreliable of sources. So I'm going to try to stick to the personal and hope that some combination of words encourages a new-to-you thought to arise, maybe the germ of a future sermon. So I'd like you to start by recalling a time when you felt ashamed. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples, but I am loath to impose my examples on you because there's so many different stripes and reasons that you might feel ashamed. But things that came to mind for me were a childhood incident when my mom discovered I'd taken a friend's toy. Or it could have happened yesterday when you realized you committed a microaggression, or maybe you just spent too many hours binging Netflix. So I'll give you a moment for an example of your own experience to arise. It's possible that nothing came up for you. Perhaps you are rarely or never aware that you experience shame. I think sometimes you might think we are post-shame, with our welcoming approach to our congregants bringing their whole selves, no matter your socioeconomic status, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, ethnicity, personal history. There's no room for shame there. It's all fine. Whereas in an earlier generation, you might have stayed in the closet. Nowadays, there's no need to, at least in our community. And aren't we feeling pretty righteous as you use these days, confident that we are on the correct side of history and justice? We teach our kids wholesome sexuality through the OWL program. We wear our yellow Side with Love t-shirts at protest marches. We put love at the center of it all, at least in principle. But does that smugness obscure a lack of self-awareness and a lack of consistent application of our principles? If peace, love, compassion, and justice are our ideals, are we acting in ways that are consistently peaceful, loving, compassionate, and just in our personal and everyday lives, not just when we're carrying a sign in a demonstration? So if you said yes to never experiencing shame, take a moment to ask yourself, am I sure? Are all my relationships filled with compassionate, loving speech? Have I been fair in all my dealings? Is there not a single soul I've disrespected, lost, forgotten for a minute the inherent worth and dignity of all beings? Have I subtly or not so subtly made my fellow congregant feel that they are not anti-racist enough or haven't taken as much social action as they should have? Are we truly listening openly to each other? Or are we sometimes virtue signaling or shoring up our own sense of self-worth? It's possible I'm a carrier, not feeling the shame myself, but inflicting it on others. I don't know how you answer these questions, but I know there are many times I've been dismissive of people. Not just people in the news, but actual people I know in real life. When I've said unkind or inappropriate or even harmful things. When I've just stopped dealing with people I feel frustrated with, instead of trying to understand them better. So if you can still unequivocally state you have no thing to feel ashamed about, no action you have taken or word you have spoken or action you have failed to take or word you have failed to speak that runs contrary to the values you profess to hold, then perhaps you are a saint or a bodhisattva, and thank you for staying amongst us and sharing your wisdom. Or maybe you're ashamed of acknowledging that you are carrying some shame or have buried those feelings so deeply. Now, we'd like to believe that if we're well-grounded in self-confidence or self-esteem, No one can make us feel ashamed. Yet, I'd say with very rare exceptions, we change our behavior when we are with others so we can be more socially acceptable. So why don't we talk about the S word? When, in preparing these remarks, I started thinking about shame and all its kindred: embarrassment, humiliation, guilt, mortification, chagrin, self-reproach. And my first stop was, of course, the library, where I hoped to research our relationship with shame and find some wiser words than my own. But I found three kinds of books. First, sadly, since it was the majority of the listings in the catalog, adult self-help on how to free yourself from shame and heal, many containing some synonym for liberation in the subtitle, such as shame, free yourself, find joy, and build true self-esteem, an alarming number of which were specifically geared towards a Christian audience. Second, there were books for mental health professionals on treating shame in a clinical setting. So that's out of my wheelhouse for sure. And third, and most sadly, teen social issues books about shaming and bullying, both online and in person, like the one called Shaming and Bullying. So none of these categories seem to apply to my topic. I wanted to think about what role shame plays in our spiritual journey. So here I'd like to acknowledge that there are too many people who suffer from abuse in their childhood and feel unwarranted shame around those traumas. That is not my topic today. There's definitely a role for addressing some varieties of inner shame in a therapeutic situation, but obviously beyond my scope for a Sunday sermon. So whereas we may feel, as the books in the library seem to indicate, that we should never feel ashamed of ourselves, I disagree. As Mohandas Gandhi is quoted as saying, accurately or inaccurately, I'm not sure, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. When there is a mismatch between your aspirations and your actions and words, you may have cause to feel ashamed. I say I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, but I just yelled at my kid. There seems to me to be a clear distinction between embarrassment and shame. Now, I think if you're embarrassed, you were probably quite happy to have continued what you were doing as long as no one else observed you or made fun of you. So what I'm reflecting on is not an externally applied force, but an internally applied force. Embarrassment is like the moral equivalent of a toilet paper stuck to the waistband of your pants. You've been found out to be a flawed human creature. Your public persona is suddenly no longer what you want it to be. But your basic tenets were not being challenged. So that's not the same thing as shame. Shame comes from a deep place inside. When you experience a moral dissonance between your actions and your values, and your cheeks burn, you cannot look someone in the eye. You want to crawl into a dark place and hide. Perhaps you saw or heard something wrong, and you remained silent. You said something unkind and careless, and you know you hurt someone else's feelings. You can insert your own examples here. Maybe you apologize right away and mend the relationship, or maybe you lack the courage in that moment, so you squirrel that shame away and carry on with your life. Maybe the interaction was a casual encounter with someone you will likely not meet again, and there is no means for you to atone. So, unsatisfied with the available books on the topic, I turned to people for their take on shame. I thought about a professor of medieval history I'd studied with in college, who spoke about the societal importance of shame. Instead of putting people in prison or punishing them behind closed doors, medieval and early modern Europeans dealt punishment in the marketplace, the stocks, public whippings. In order to maintain community standards of behavior, shame was a powerful motivator to toe the line. It still is. Cyberbullying would have no power if it didn't. And if we didn't start feeling ashamed of soiling ourselves, none of us would be potty trained. I did find one book that dealt with this aspect of shame and drew a link among the development of virtue, altruism, and shame. Then I asked a friend of mine who's a Buddhist nut about shame what the Buddhist take on it is, and she said, well, it's one of the negative mental formations. Well, no shade to the sister. I looked up a list of 51 mental formations, sort of a catalog of emotions and categories of thoughts. They include a wide range of things like attention, perception, but also emotions. Now, the emotions, even though Buddhism professes to be all about non-dualism, were grouped by wholesome and unwholesome. To my surprise, there was no listing for unqualified shame, but only for inner shame. And inner shame fell under the wholesome category. When I found that term, I was like, aha, that's really what I meant all along, inner shame. So lacking inner shame, I imagine, puts you in the same category as Senator Joe McCarthy, as when Army Counsel Joseph Welch asked him, have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you no sense of decency? To be shameless means you are cavalierly striding through the world, disregarding the consequences of your actions, assuming you are always justified in whatever you say or do. Is it okay for us to call someone else shameless while failing to acknowledge our own moral dissonances? Have you ever asked yourself, have you no sense of moral decency, sir? Clearly, feeling this inner shame is not necessarily a bad thing. It feels unpleasant to experience, but it is not necessarily harmful. Shouldn't we be ashamed of actions that run contrary to decent human behavior? Debatable term, I'll admit. Far from freeing ourselves from shame, I think we need to hold our shame up to the light and figure out its source and its purpose. So, at this point, I hope I've made it crystal clear that you may regard shame as a neutral emotion, one that may be good or bad for you, but it's a flag for something else that is going on within you. And as with anger, fear, and grief, there are varieties of shame I would consider unwholesome, but others I would consider productive. So if your shame arises from a culturally imposed rule or taboo, maybe that shame can be gently put aside. But if your shame is a recognition that you have behaved badly, then that shame needs to be taken by the hand and dealt with. And I think the distinction cannot be fully made until you have fully brought your shame into your awareness. So here is the moment where you metaphorically or literally prepare a pot of tea and sit down with your shame. And you have to make sure it's hot tea, because you have to sip hot tea slowly, not gulp it down, like the iced version. So let me come over to my tea table here. So the metaphorical tea time is an invitation to chat calmly and amicably. And that's why I've made the table lovely. This isn't a confrontation, it's a conversation. So you're amongst friends, and you have no need to fear for your privacy. It's just you and your shame. No one else is listening. You might want to recall the example that you thought of at the beginning of the sermon, or maybe something else has come up for you. So you're trying to understand your shame a little better, and how do you arrive at greater understanding in any situation? Mostly by asking questions and really paying attention to the answers. So put your phone in another room, turn off your playlist, sit down and say, Hello, old friend. I see you are there, and I am listening to you. So here's some questions you might explore with your shame. What's made this shame arise? What condition was there that brought this feeling up to you? Why am I feeling some kind of way about it? Where in my body am I feeling shame? Burning face, the tight throat, the twisted belly? How did I respond to this shame? Did I get angry at the person who I perceive to be shaming me? Or maybe I feel like groveling before the person I feel I've offended. How was this shame transmitted to me? I know I learned about shame from my parents, but they probably received it from their ancestors who taught them. And why was it important to them? Did it help them survive and thrive in their culture? Maybe it's just an unexamined habit or behavior. This is the way we've always done things if you want to be part of this group. And I can't discount the role my peers and my teachers play in enforcing social codes. Maybe I just received this from the culture or milieu I grew up in or live in now. You might say, I understand that this was important to my family, but it really is not useful for me any longer. So I can take a moment to appreciate the suffering of that ancestor around the shame we shared. A feeling of compassion and forgiveness might arise towards your ancestors, but also towards yourself. You know, it doesn't feed the shame to just give it a hug and recognize that it is painful. Now, the origins of our shame sometimes remain obscure even after we've sat down and tried to track them down. I met a man, and I don't really know him, so I can't ask his permission to share this story, but it's a pretty generic story. He felt really ashamed about having gotten divorced. He had nothing in his spiritual background that would say that divorce is wrong. It was definitely the right situation. He's happily remarried to someone he feels is a better fit, and yet he has difficulty shaking off the feeling of shame from that divorce. So you may also find yourself saying, my dear, none of this applies to me. You, my friend, shame, are here because I'm feeling guilty of violating my conscience. And to know that, I must know what values I truly hold. And as a Unitarian Universalist, engaged in a lifelong search for truth and meaning, I have an advantage in discovering what values I truly hold. So I know I'm making progress, not necessarily when I have answers to my questions, but when a fresh set of questions that have been lying underneath all of that begin to reveal themselves. You can sit with any of the so-called negative emotions and have a gentle conversation with them. It's not a one-and-done practice, it's ongoing. One pot of tea is usually not enough, so I drink a lot of tea. Make as many as you need. You might wish to make it a weekly practice. And I hope, I don't have the skills to take you to the mountaintop, but I hope I've been able to take you by the hand and gently walk towards a higher ground. So listen to your shame with a calm and open heart and mind, and gently and compassionately ask what it is trying to tell you.
Rebecca's given us some wonderful guidance on getting acquainted with our shame. And now I'm here to be shameless. I set about to write up my stewardship moment this month. I wanted to get it done before I went on my trip and, have everything in order. And I had such a mental block because all I could think about was how hot it is, how hot I am, how hot every building I entered still felt. Just hot. Well, I'll tell you how hot I am. It's so hot. I bought a loaf of bread, and by the time I got home, it was toast. It's so hot that asphalt has a liquid state. It's so hot that the water bottle you left in the car an hour ago is ready to steep your tea bag. It's so hot I saw a bird pull a worm out of the ground using an oven mitt. It's so hot I'm using Celsius instead of Fahrenheit just to have a lower number. It's so hot they put a fan in the debt ceiling. It's so hot I saw a chicken lay an omelet. It's so hot the trees are whistling for the dogs. It's so hot Jehovah's Witnesses have started telemarketing. It's so hot your energy bill is nearly as expensive as a semester of college. And if you think your energy bill is high, no, that's what I do here, you should see the one for our church building. And we need to keep our building running even in summer. So please contribute what you can to help keep the bills paid during these hot summer months. And don't forget to tip your waiters. All joking aside, as ushers begin taking the collection, in a moment you will see on the screen the ways you can contribute to First U. Your generous contributions are received with gratitude. Please join me now in dedicating our offering. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it now as I give you these words from Amy Zucker. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world.
Thank you, Jan, for the comic relief. Thank you all for being here online or in person. Thank you, musicians. That was perfect. And thank you, AV team, and all those who helped keep this building open and running for our Sunday services. I'd like to close with the benediction of sorts. These words are from writer, producer, and actor Lena Waithe. And if you don't know who she is, look her up. You cannot wait for the world to be calm. You must be calm in the world. I'll say it again for the people at the back. You cannot wait for the world to be calm. You must be calm in the world. Now please rise in body or spirit and join our hymn leader, Sarah Collins, in singing hymn 323, Break Not the Circle. you.